morning. It is yet another wet Thursday here in Korea on May 17th. Live from Seoul, I'm Shin Se-min. Before we get started, these are the stories topping the hour. South Korea's National Security Council convenes a meeting on North Korea's sudden change of heart following the regime's abrupt cancellation of high-level talks with Seoul this week. The White House stays positive about its summit with North Korea and downplays some denuclearization models mentioned by members of the Trump team. Now this as Chinese President Xi Jinping tells a visiting group from Pyongyang that he fully supports the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit. Here in South Korea, a second day of torrential rain. One person died on Wednesday after being swept away by rising water levels, while another remains missing as downpours continue to lash the central region. The Standing Committee of South Korea's National Security Council met for an hour at the top office early this morning and discussed North Korea's pre-dawn cancellation of the high-level inter-Korean talks on Wednesday, as well as its sudden departure from the latest diplomatic overture. During the weekly meeting, chaired by President Moon Jae-in's National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong, the members, including the nation's unification, foreign affairs, and defense ministers, as well as the intelligence agency chiefs, exchanged ideas to figure out North Korea's true intent behind its threat to pull out of the historic North Korea-U.S. summit between leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump next month. North Korea threatened to pull the plug on its summit with U.S. President Donald Trump, but the man himself seems relatively nonchalant, with Trump saying, "We'll see if the summit still goes ahead." Now, staying optimistic, the White House is trying to distance itself from John Bolton's recent Libya model comments by saying they're pushing for the Trump model to denuclearize North Korea. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
The potential path to denuclearization and peace on the Korean peninsula now hangs in the balance after North Korea threatened this week to pull out of its upcoming summit with U.S. President Donald Trump. This is what Trump had to say about the matter on Wednesday ahead of his talks with the president of Uzbekistan.
We haven't been notified at all. We'll have to see.
President Trump has said he expects the June 12 summit in Singapore to be a success. And until the North Summit threat and sudden cancellation of high-level inter-Korean talks this week, it appeared everything was falling into place. Pyongyang released 3 American detainees last week in a show of good faith, and President Trump praised North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for being excellent to the men who were imprisoned under questionable circumstances. However, despite the setback, the White House remains optimistic.
Look, we're still hopeful that it takes place. We think the same thing we thought yesterday, that it's an important conversation to have, and it's something that we're hopeful that it does.
With North Korea blasting Trump's National Security Advisor John Bolton and his Libya model statements, the White House press secretary had this to say.
Look, again, this is the President Trump model. He's going to run this the way he sees fit. We're 100% confident, as we've said many times before, and as we all know that you're aware, he's the best negotiator, and we're very confident in that front.
For the time being, it's a waiting game. On the surface, South Korea and the United States seem to see the latest developments as a minor setback. But we'll have to wait and see if the highly anticipated summit between Kim Jong-un and President Trump goes ahead as planned. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton says he's trying to stay optimistic and realistic at the same time following North Korea's summit cancellation threat. Speaking to Fox News Radio on Wednesday, Bolton said the U.S. will do everything it can to have a successful meeting, but will not back away from its objective, which is a complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. Bolton also added that he has spoken to his South Korean counterpart Chung Eui-yong on the possible reasons behind North Korea's sudden about-turn. And it was a clear message. North Korea has made its disdain for U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton known to the world. Now this as Pyongyang's Vice Foreign Minister singled out the controversial figure within the Trump administration by name, harshly criticizing him personally and disparaging his recent Libya model analogy. Our EG1 reports.
Did the United States' constant pressure and hardline stance on North Korea go too far? The North state-run Korea Central News Agency published a statement on Wednesday by the regime's first Vice Foreign Minister Kim Kye-gwan, rebuking the U.S. for what he called its provocative assertions, especially those of White House National Security Advisor John Bolton. Kim said that despite his hopes for the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit, he was disappointed by Washington's provoking of the North with reckless, unbridled remarks. He listed assertions made by high-level U.S. officials, including Bolton, like the so-called Libya model of nuclear abandonment. Also phrases like complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization and denuclearization before rewards. Kim said it's absurd to compare North Korea to Libya, which was only in the early stages of developing nuclear weapons. Kim pointed the finger squarely at Bolton, saying North Korea cannot hide its feelings of revulsion at the hardliner. And he warned that if Trump administration forgets the setbacks America has suffered in the past by following people like Bolton, prospects for the upcoming summit and future relations are crystal clear. Kim also slammed President Trump. He said Washington misread Pyongyang's broad-minded initiatives as signs of weakness and accused the U.S. of promoting the North's decisions as a result of sanctions and pressure. The vice minister said if Trump attends the summit with sincerity to improve ties, then North will give a deserved response. But if the U.S. only tries to corner the North and force Pyongyang to unilaterally give up its nuclear weapons, then North Korea will no longer be interested and would have no choice but reconsider holding the talks altogether. There are concerns now that the historic summit between the North and the U.S. could be called off, but a North Korea expert said that's not what the regime wants.
If Pyongyang really wanted to pull out of the talks, it would put out this statement in the name of the regime itself. But the statement was written in the first person by a minister, not at the forefront of settling things with the U.S.
The intention of the statement, says the expert, to warn Bolton and Trump.
Bolton has been talking far too ambitiously about this summit. He's proposed more agenda items like human rights, other weapons of mass destruction, and the abductee issues. And he's also been talking about the method of denuclearization and the Libya model. Talking in this way makes it appear that North Korea has been defeated by the U.S. Also, with the summit ahead, these kinds of statements can be seen inappropriate.
The expert added that Trump should get Bolton to tone it down and work so that the North's denuclearization is accompanied by the end of what Kim Kye-gwan in his statement called Washington's hostile policies. 이지원, Arirang News.
In another sign of the deepening relations between North Korea and China, a North Korean friendship group visiting the country this week sat down with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Wednesday. President Xi said China is prioritizing the traditional friendship between North Korea and China and noted that he shared detailed views with Kim Jong-un when they met twice recently. The Chinese leader said he backs the improvement of inter-Korean relations, the planned summit between Pyongyang and Washington, as well as the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The North Korean side also delivered Pyongyang's will to solidify bilateral relations and learn from China's economic development. Also supporting for the success of the incoming and upcoming summit, the head of the United Nations has urged both North Korea and the U.S. to put their differences aside and hold their Singapore summit just as planned. Speaking to reporters in Brussels on Wednesday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he hoped that in the end, common sense will prevail and that the summit will take place and it will be successful. And now for a look at stories making headlines around the world. And we start in the U.S. President Trump has once again lashed out at the media, which have suggested that he made concessions in trade negotiations with China to save a Chinese telecommunication company. For more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Aram at the News Center. Aram, the White House officials have suggested that the easing of penalties on ZTE was separate from the trade talks, but Trump's tweets on Wednesday have muddled that message.
That's right, Simon. On Sunday, Trump tweeted that he was going to ease penalties levied on ZTE for violating U.S. sanctions by trading with North Korea and Iran. At that time, he said he had instructed the Commerce Department to help the firm get back into business fast, expressing concern that too many jobs are being lost in China. The United States and China are slated to hold trade talks this week to avoid a potentially devastating trade war, and reports suggest that helping ZTE was part of concessions made by Trump to reach a trade consensus with Beijing. However, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross had suggested the two matters were separate, saying Trump's push to help ZTE was, quote, an enforcement issue and not anything to do with trade. But in a series of tweets on Wednesday, Trump caused confusion by saying the ZTE issue pertains to the larger trade deal. He also accused CNN and the Washington Post of writing fake stories about the negotiations. He said there has been, quote, no folding in the talks, which he said hadn't even started yet. He also said he had not yet seen China's demands, adding, quote, the U.S. has very little to give because it has given so much over the years. China has much to give. U.S. lawmakers have been urging Trump not to pull back restrictions on a firm that does business with America's rivals, saying that doing so would harm national security. In other news, fury has erupted in Hong Kong after a journalist from China's autonomous territory was arrested and left injured while trying to interview a human rights lawyer in Beijing on Wednesday. The violent arrest of Chu Chun-ming is the second such incident against a Hong Kong journalist within a week. Video footage showed Chinese police knocking him to the ground, causing his forehead to bleed. They then handcuffed him and forced him into a police car. He was released from detention a few hours later after signing what Chu called a statement of repentance. The human rights lawyer, meanwhile, Zi Yang-yi, was in Beijing to attend a hearing on whether his license should be revoked. He was one of the first out of about 300 lawyers and activists to be arrested in China's so-called 709 crackdown back in 2015. A 5.2 magnitude earthquake has struck southern Mexico, triggering alarms and evacuation orders. Wednesday's tremor in the coastal state of Guerrero was lightly felt in the capital as well. There were no immediate reports of casualties or damage. Mexico is still recovering from a pair of powerful earthquakes that killed nearly 400 people last September. Michigan State University has agreed to pay $500 million to hundreds of American gymnasts sexually abused by its former professor and ex-Team USA Dr. Larry Nassar. Nassar had received a prison sentence of up to 175 years for sexually molesting the athletes under the guise of medical treatment, and he is also serving a 60-year sentence at the moment for child pornography. Wednesday's deal calls for Michigan State University to pay 332 victims $425 million who have made a claim, and another $75 million for any future allegations against Nassar and the school.
It is another dark and wet morning with torrential rain still falling in Seoul and the surrounding areas here in Korea. Now, the central region saw some 100 millimeters of rain late Wednesday night, and the capital Seoul was lashed out by over 45 millimeters of rain concentrated over a short period of time. And following this heavy downpours, one person is dead and another is missing. For more on this weather outlook for the day, we're going to connect live to our Lee Ji-hyun at the Weather Center. Ji-hyun, so how much of more of the rain will we be seeing today?
Well, Simon, at this point, it looks like we'll see some 70 millimeters of more rain in the capital, Seoul, at least. And areas like Cheolwon in Gangwon-do and Paju in Gyeonggi-do province could get up to 100 millimeters today. So Seoul saw over 65 millimeters of showers from yesterday into this morning. And that's more than half the precipitation we usually see in the month of May here in Seoul. In fact, a heavy rain advisory was issued in Seoul a couple of hours ago, and parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeonggi-do provinces are also under an advisory with showers likely to continue until Friday. So on and off downpours will sweep the upper regions, and they could come with thunder and lightning at times. So have your waterproof rainwear ready before heading out. And the further south you are, the less rain you will see today. Heat and high humidity will linger. Seoul gets up to 25 degrees Celsius, while Daegu and Gyeongju will make it to 29 and 30 degrees. And Jeju will reach 30 degrees under mostly sunny skies today. And that's all the weather update for now.
Thank you, Jihyun, for that update. Shifting focus, South Korea will start disclosing its currency market intervention records on a regular basis. The Bank of Korea and the Finance Ministry said Thursday that they will disclose the country's net buying and selling of U.S. dollars to prevent sharp fluctuations of the Korean won. The government will reveal details every 6 months for 1 year, starting from the second half of 2018. And from then on, the government will disclose the details on a quarterly basis. Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon says the measure will help remove unnecessary misunderstandings about South Korea's currency market operations and help build trust about its policies in the long run. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix saw dramatic increases in their semiconductor sales in the first quarter of 2018. Samsung Electronics overtook Intel to become the world's biggest semiconductor seller. And according to an IC Insight report, Samsung had sales of over $19 billion during the first 3 months this year, a 43% on-year jump. SK Hynix sold over $8 billion of semiconductors in the first quarter, up 49% from last year, which is. And according to a report by Semiconductor Equipment and Materials International, quarterly global silicon wafer shipments climbed above 3 billion square inches for the first time in the first quarter of 2018. South Korea's Culture Ministry has laid out a long-term policy blueprint. It not only aims to protect artists' individual rights of free expression, but also achieve gender equality in the industry. Get our Ko Ryun-hee for that report.
The event started with an apology. The Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Do Jong-wan, bowed in front of nearly 300 attendees at a briefing in Seoul on Wednesday to apologize for the cultural blacklist created by the previous Park Geun-hye administration, which was used to hinder careers of artists deemed critical of her policies.
In the past, the South Korean government suppressed and invaded the freedom of expression, hurting not only the cultural figures, but also the general public.
The event laid out the 9 goals of the ministry's Culture Vision 2030, put together after input from 8,000 participants since September last year. The policies including guaranteeing workers in the culture industry certain rights, achieving gender equality in the culture sphere, expanding the public's exercise of cultural rights, and seeking cultural diversity. To protect artists' rights, the Preparation Committee aims to put in place new legislation endorsing freedom of expression by 2019.
Artists will now be protected by the law. This means they have the right to express whatever they want, but also claim their labor rights, which means they'll be rewarded properly based on their working hours.
Other than protecting artists' status and rights, Culture Vision 2030 is also about achieving gender equality. This is related to the Me Too movement in South Korea, which spread across various fields this year, including the cultural industry. Research and surveys on sexual violence and assaults will be held regularly at businesses and educational institutions related to culture. But the head of an artist welfare group says constant communication is needed for the policies to be effective.
I think some artists might not be fully satisfied with the ministry's new policy. However, I think the event will encourage productive and constructive debate among artists and policymakers.
The ministry says people who are interested in the Culture Vision 2030 will be able to participate and suggest policies on the ministry's website or on social media. 고른이 아리랑 뉴스.
South Korea has a new problem to deal with, namely the disposal of plastic waste. The government is looking to sharply cut the use of plastics in the nation, and they hope to prevent the buildup of waste we saw at apartment complexes earlier this year when garbage trucks stopped picking up because of it's no longer cost-effective. Our Hong Yu reports.
People reached for plastic bags for their groceries despite signs urging them to help the environment by using fewer bags. But from October, plastic bags will no longer be used in South Korean supermarkets. This is part of the government's measures announced last Thursday to manage recyclable wastes.
Reducing the use of disposable products and increasing recycling to become a society with sustainable resource circulation is an inevitable choice.
The countermeasures differ from the past because they also aim to reduce waste right from when the products are made.
To make recycling easier, all colored plastic bottles must be replaced by clear plastic bottles by 2020, and their labels must be easily detachable.
It was a proper decision. Thoughtless, exaggerated packaging and the endless use of plastic bags are contaminating our environment. So it is a good countermeasure.
I bring my own shopping bag to help the environment at least a little bit.
To reduce the use of plastic cups in fast food restaurants and cafes, the Environment Ministry will offer a 10% discount to customers who bring their own tumblers and free refills to those who use mugs inside stores. Along with the countermeasures, cooperation from the public and related businesses is crucial in order to reduce the amount of plastic waste. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
And that is all the time we have at the hour on Arirang News. As always, thank you for watching and goodbye for now.